What's your worst story from the throw him in the pool, he'll learn how to swim parenting style? I had never gone camping before I was 11. I really wanted to go with my 10-year-old cousin. My parents took me to the woods, and handed us a tent and a half-full bag of ranch Doritos, and like a pack of bratwursts, and my 7-year-old sister. Then they pulled off, leaving us to camp for the first time alone in the woods with a 7-year-old. Not a fun weekend. I never went camping again, but it was apparently fine, because that's how my dad and uncle learned. I'm just grateful for the lack of serial killers and black bears. I got pregnant at 13. Mom allowed her new hubby to take me for the abortion, then he beat my ass when I got home from the procedure. She never asked who, what, how. I'd been molested since I was 4, 5, and somewhere in my stupid brain I guess I thought that sex was love. When I got pregnant again at 14, I was made to keep the baby to teach me a lesson. Again, no one asked. No one tried to educate me. Finally, at 25, my mom pissed me off with her cluelessness, and in a fit of rage, I blurted examples of all the years of sexual abuse I endured, and she said, "All these years, I thought Robert had been messing with you and that was the reason you were acting out. You guys, when I tell you that my head exploded at the same time all of the air left my body. I was stunned. She thought her now ex-husband had been molesting me, impregnated me not once, but twice, yet you never asked me. For clarity, it was never my stepdad. Your desire to be married to a serial cheater was far more important than my total health. She divorced him when I was 23, because she finally caught him with his best friend's wife. That was simply too much for her to handle. This explains why she shipped my daughter and I off to my grandparents, 3 months after her birth. My mom had always had an unnaturally close relationship with my oldest daughter. Anyway, I finally learned about sex education birth control from my 11th grade PE teacher. She saw my miserable self and did her best to mother and educate me at every opportunity. My dad was notorious for the rub dirt on it method when I got hurt as a kid. When I was 9 I was in a nasty motorcycle accident out in the desert. I broke and misplaced my fibula. My dad didn't want to end his desert trip early, so he told me not to look at it and to keep trying to walk. I was in so much pain anytime I would move I would black out. My brother was so concerned he urged my dad that we should go home. My dad finally gave in but was so drunk he let my 11-year-old brother at the time drive us out of the desert. He was so nervous he hit so many bumps and each bump I would black out then come to. Once we got home he thought it would be best to sleep it off before going to the hospital. The next day I was admitted to the hospital and my dad was taken into custody by CPS. Dear God, what the fuck? The next day I was admitted to the hospital and my dad was taken into custody by CPS. Fair enough. My dad, when he decided to give me driving lessons when I was a teenager, which turned out to be a driving lesson, singular. He took me to the parking lot across the street from our house, and had me tool around to get used to the steering and pedals for about 15 minutes. Then, annoyed that I wasn't catching on fast enough for his taste, he decided we should go on the actual road and I'd learn faster in a more challenging environment. Cue him barking orders to speed up, slow down, hit the brakes. In an increasingly frustrated voice as I chewed along, terrified I was going to hit someone. The culmination of our lesson came when he noticed we were low on gas, and told me to pull into the gas station. Keep in mind my sum total of driving experience at this point was about 25 minutes, which did not include parallel parking. I pulled into the gas station and came at the pump at something like a 30-degree angle. He grabbed the steering wheel to correct and actually yelled at me, "Jesus Christ. Don't you know how to drive?" To which I said, "No, I don't. You're teaching me, remember." He drove back home silently. That was the end of Dad's driving lessons. I signed up with a driving school after that. Reminds me of a friend's driving lesson. Back in the day, folks used to take their kids for a driving lesson at the Trinity River Bottoms in Dallas. It's basically a levee. The road is on a levee, and you can go left or right. My friend was an angry kid, so keep this in mind. His dad takes said friend and his twin for their first driving lesson. His twin does great, their dad is ready to hand him car keys and go forth in life. Let's not consider stoplights, pedestrians, emergency vehicles. My friend, well, he keeps swerving, because he thinks he has to avoid the rocks on the levee trail, and it appears he's veering off the road. His dad yells at him about how stupid he is. Why doesn't he understand? His brother did great, all that. My friend says, "Fuck it," jumps out of the driver's seat onto the road, truck still and drive, leaving them two in the middle and passenger seat of the truck, with the wheels not steered straight. They start rolling down the levee, and all he heard was his dad screaming like a banshee, trying to slide to the driver part of the slick bench seat of the truck. My buddy never got another driving lesson from his dad again. Honestly, I have no idea who taught him to day drive. Lol. I got stung by a bee and my mother was convinced I was faking. At the point I started to struggle to breathe, she finally irritatingly relented and made me walk to the hospital pushing my baby brother's stroller the entire way. When I got there, The staff were mortified, horrified, rushed me in to give me an epinephrine shot, and luckily that did the trick. Many months later, hubby got into my bedroom, and my father called me a pussy for coming and getting him to deal with it, instead of dealing with it myself. You have to learn how to deal with these things sometime. Or, I could just ask someone not allergic to bees to come and safely deal with the bee instead of risking hospitalization. Edit. Just to address some stuff I'm getting comments. I agree my parents were terrible and abusive for more than just this one single incident. I have been NC for about 20 years because of the way they treated me as a child. I have countless incidents like this from both of them. This one just stood out at the time I was replying to this. Not my story, but my mom's. She developed a phobia after she was thrown into a pool to learn how to swim. At the age of 70, she still doesn't know how to. She's terrified of being on the water, even in a safety vest. And then, some fake clairvoyant told her she would die by drowning. So we spent our summers in the mountains as far away from being on water. Edit. She was thrown in the water as a child, not as a 70-year-old. Edit 2, fake clairvoyant. Real one. Same difference, haha. I was scared of the deep end, so my dad threw me in. My cousin parked her inflatable mattress in the corner I was in immediately. My parents supposedly yelled at him to move, he didn't. I don't know how long I was under the mattress for, but I was spitting up water, choking when I came back up. I was maybe 6 at the time. Wow, so the double whammy. Parents and cousin double teaming you to get you to drown. Ignore them, bullies, and don't show a reaction. When they're bored they'll stop. Completely false. And you wonder why I hate going to school so much, mother. It's not a wonder that when I went to secondary school, I made a motto of don't stand for anyone's bullshit. I went through too much of this shit for anyone else to do the same. Ironically enough, there are studies that state that the trauma childhood bullying goes for the rest of one's life, so I'm pretty much set. When I got my very first period, then my family made a trip to the pool the next day. My mom shrugged it off and told me you don't bleed when you're swimming, and never said another word about it. Spent the entire time taking trips to the bathroom. The first time I went to the pool on my period was the first time I used a tampon. Unfortunately, I was too proud to read the directions. My mom didn't explain them to me, and I spent the day with the applicator inside me. Didn't know you took it off until the end of the day when I removed it, and wow, look, there's the cotton part. I was volunteering at a parent-child zoo day, and saw a few parents like this. The zoo had some free-roaming peacocks, and it was awful how many parents just didn't tell their too young to know kids that they can be mean. So the little toddler goes, wow, pretty bird, and tries to get a closer look, only to get chased and attacked by this thing while the parents watch. Most of them said something like you should have known better. Like, how if you never teach them? The child can barely walk, you expect them to remember that some animals have a strong territorial sense? And then your baby gets terrorized by this thing that's bigger than them and looks like an alien for all they know, and you don't even give them a hug? See also, that one mom we had to kick out of the zoo because she was encouraging her kids to antagonize the llama in the hopes it would spit on them. Yikes, people, have some empathy for tiny humans who trust you implicitly with their well-being. Being hissed at by a goose when I was still a toddler is literally my first memory. My grandma wasn't far away, so I doubt it was close enough to hurt me, but I felt its warning fully, and the thing was as big as I was and terrifying. My dad taught me this by running with my stroller and saying that we were being chased by peacocks. I don't think his intention was to teach, and he just thought it was funny, but guess who has a fear of peacocks almost 2 decades later? When I was about 5 or 6, I was very sick with the flu. Fever, vomiting, sweating, congestion, it was awful. There was some mix-up at the pharmacy, and they thought I was my father and gave him adult medication, basically these giant horse pills. Now, normal child medication for things like this are syrups and chewable shit for obvious reasons. My dad comes home and tells me I have to take these meds. I have a hard time getting them down, almost choking a few times. My dad got frustrated and literally started shoving these huge pills down my sore throat with his angry shaking fingers. I started crying. My nose was stuffed so I could only breathe through my mouth. I remember my dad's wedding ring banging against my teeth, eyes watering, gasping for air while looking at my mom for help. Eventually I coughed it back up, crying and throat on fire. I remember my mom demanding an apology from my dad, who just said, well, he's going to have to learn to take pills like that sometime anyway, and stormed off. Damn. I haven't thought about that story in 20 plus years. Holy crap, I have a really similar experience to that. I started getting migraines back when I was around 11-12, and I got a really bad one while I was up at my parents' vacation house with a friend. We were watching a movie, and it started to hurt pretty badly. I wanted to get some kind of chewable pain reliever, because of my fear of choking. My dad pulled out a bottle of these massive tablets of aspirin, and says I can take these or suffer through the headache. I tried to swallow them with water, but I literally couldn't spat them out. Growing increasingly angry, my dad finally grabbed a marshmallow from our pantry, waved it in front of my face before he stuffed the 2 tablets in them. He then grabbed me by the head like it was a baseball and forced my jaw open, and stuffed the marshmallow tablet lump down my throat and forcing me to swallow. It hurt so bad and I was terrified I'd choke to death. I started to cry and then he screamed at me to shut up. My friend saw the whole thing and wouldn't look at my dad for the rest of the trip. Your comment brought that memory back, and damn. Our parents are screwed up.
Please like and subscribe for new content.